My parents gave away my bedroom to my brother while I pay the mortgage. So I'm 26, and for about the past year, I've been living with my parents in the city. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I get it. When people hear that, they immediately picture some guy who can't get his life together, right? Living in his childhood bedroom, eating mom's cooking, probably playing video games all day. But that's not even close to what's actually going on here. Here's the thing, I own the house. Like, my name is on the deed. I pay the mortgage every single month. I cover the groceries, the utilities, the internet, the whole deal. My parents don't contribute financially at all. Not a single dollar. And I'm not saying that to make them sound bad or anything. It's just the reality of the situation, and it's important context for everything that happened. Let me back up a bit and explain how we even got here. My parents, Liz and Tom, they're both 52 and 55. They were teachers for most of their careers, both of them. Good teachers too, from what I heard from their students over the years. They spent decades living out in this small town about 2 hours from the city, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and the most exciting thing that happens all week is when the hardware store gets a new shipment in. After they retired a couple years back, they started getting restless. I think the quiet life they'd always talked about wanting turned out to be a lot more boring than they'd imagined. Mom would call me every other week talking about how there was nothing to do, how all their friends had moved away or passed away, how they wanted to be closer to restaurants and museums and actual civilization. Dad was the same way. He'd worked his whole life dreaming about retirement. And then when it finally came, he realized he didn't actually know what to do with himself. So they started talking about moving to the city. At first, it was just talk, that kind of idle conversation people have when they're daydreaming. But then it became more serious. They started looking at apartments, talking about downsizing, all that stuff. And honestly, I felt bad for them. They'd done a lot for me growing up. They paid for my college, supported me when I was figuring out my career, never made me feel like a burden even when money was tight for them. I'm a software engineer, and I've been doing pretty well for myself. I was pulling in a solid six-figure salary, working mostly remote, and I've been saving up for a house anyway. So I thought, why not? Why not get a place big enough for all of us? I could help them out, they'd get to be in the city like they wanted, and honestly, it would be nice to have family around. I travel for work sometimes, and it would be good to have someone around to water the plants or whatever. So that's what we did. I found this 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, not like some mansion or anything, but it was nice. Good bones, as my dad kept saying when we were looking at it. It had a small backyard, a living room big enough that we wouldn't be on top of each other all the time, and 3 actual bedrooms, not like those places where they try to call a closet a bedroom. Since I was the one buying it and paying the mortgage, I claimed the master bedroom. I mean, that just made sense, right? It had this walk-in closet that I honestly didn't even need. I'm not exactly a clothes guy, but the real selling point was the private bathroom. Growing up, I'd shared a bathroom with my brother Jake. And let me tell you, that experience taught me that I never wanted to share a bathroom again if I could help it. Having my own space to get ready in the morning without someone banging on the door or leaving their stuff everywhere, that was worth a lot to me. The second bedroom became my office. Since I work from home probably 80% of the time, I needed a proper setup. I got it all arranged exactly how I wanted it. Dual monitors, a really good chair, because I've been having back problems from sitting so much, decent lighting, all the stuff you need to not hate your workspace. I figured the third bedroom would just be a guest room, for when relatives visited or if I had friends stay over or whatever. At first, everything was pretty great, honestly. My parents seemed genuinely happy to be in the city. Mom joined this book club she'd found online, and Dad started going to this cafe every morning where a bunch of other retired guys would hang out and talk about whatever old guys talk about. Politics, probably. Sports. The weather. Who knows? They had their routine, I had mine. They'd do their gardening and watch their shows, and I'd work and take care of the house stuff and pay the bills. It felt like a good arrangement. I really didn't mind covering all the expenses. I was making good money, way more than I needed just for myself, and their pensions weren't exactly huge. They'd both been public school teachers, after all. And it's family, You don't charge your parents rent when they're living with you. At least, that's what I thought. That's how I was raised. You take care of family. Then everything changed, and it happened so fast I almost didn't see it coming. One morning at breakfast, Mom dropped this comment super casually, like she was mentioning the weather. She goes, "Oh, by the way, your brother Jake and Emma are thinking about moving to the city. Things aren't going so well for them back home, and Emma just found out she's pregnant, so they could really use some family support right now." I remember just nodding and taking another bite of my cereal. Jake is my older brother. He's 28, 2 years older than me, and Emma's his wife. They're 26, same age as me actually. They've been living in the same small town where we grew up, and from what I'd heard through the family grapevine, things hadn't been going great for them. Jake had gone through like 3 different jobs in the past 2 years, and Emma was working at some retail place that barely paid anything. They weren't exactly destitute or anything, but they definitely weren't thriving. The pregnancy news was new though. I remember thinking, okay, well, that's going to make things harder for them financially. Babies are expensive, but I figured they'd just move to the city and get their own apartment or something, you know? Maybe we'd have them over for dinner sometimes. Normal family stuff. I should have known better. I should have seen what was coming. But I didn't. A few days later, Mom sat me down in the living room with this really innocent expression on her face. She had that tone of voice that I now recognize as her. I'm about to tell you something you're not going to like, but I'm going to act like it's no big deal voice. She said, so we invited Jake and Emma to come stay with us for a little while. Just until they get back on their feet, you know, with the baby coming and everything. That's when I should have put my foot down. That's when I should have said, wait, hold on, this is my house. Maybe we should talk about this first. But I didn't. I just kind of sat there processing it. And before I could really form a coherent response, Mom had already moved on to talking about something else, like the conversation was over and the decision was made. I kept telling myself it would be fine. It's just temporary, right? They'll stay for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then they'll find their own place. Jake's my brother. We had our issues growing up, what siblings don't, but at the end of the day, he's family. I can help out for a bit. But here's the thing I didn't realize at the time. My parents hadn't asked me if Jake and Emma could move in. They'd told me they'd already invited them. Past tense. Done deal. I was still trying to wrap my head around this when, literally 1 week later, Jake and Emma showed up at the front door with suitcases and boxes and bags, looking like they were moving in permanently. And that's exactly what they did. They moved right into the guest room, and from day one, it was clear they weren't thinking of this as a temporary situation. They unpacked everything. Emma started rearranging the furniture in the guest room. Jake brought his gaming setup and set it up in the corner of the living room. They just settled in like they owned the place. I tried to be cool about it. I mean, what was I going to do? Kick my pregnant sister-in-law out onto the street? That would make me look like a monster. Plus, my parents kept talking about how hard things were for Jake and Emma, how much they needed help, how family sticks together in difficult times. And I believe that. I still do, actually. But there's a difference between helping family and being taken advantage of by family. And I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The grocery bill basically doubled overnight. I go shopping and stock the fridge and pantry. And 2 days later, everything would be gone. Not just the snacks or the easy stuff. I'm talking about ingredients I'd bought for specific meals I was planning to cook, special coffee I'd ordered online, everything. Emma was pregnant, so she was eating a lot, which I understood. But Jake was treating the kitchen like an all-you-can-eat buffet, and nobody was offering to chip in or even just asking before they finished something. The utility bills went up too. Longer showers, lights left on in rooms nobody was in, the thermostat cranked up because Emma was cold all the time. Small stuff, maybe, but it added up. And still, I didn't say anything. I just paid the bills and told myself it was temporary. Now, Jake and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the one who could never quite get it together. He'd start projects and never finish them. He'd get excited about new jobs and then quit after a few months. He was always bouncing from one thing to another, and my parents were always bailing him out. I'm not trying to sound superior or anything. We're just different people. I'm the type who makes plans and follows through. He's more of a see where life takes me type, which is fine, except life kept taking him to places where he needed to borrow money or crash on someone's couch or ask for help. Emma, I didn't know as well. They'd been together for about 3 years, married for one. She seemed nice enough at family gatherings, but there was always this vibe I got from her. Like she expected things to be handed to her. She'd make these little comments that seemed innocent on the surface, but had this edge to them. Like once, at a family dinner, she'd said something about how it must be nice that I could afford to live alone while they had to make sacrifices. I remember thinking, I don't live alone anymore, right? And also, I worked my ass off to get where I am. But I didn't say anything. I just smiled and changed the subject. So they've been living with us for maybe 2 weeks when Emma started making these comments. Little things that seem harmless, but were actually super annoying once you notice the pattern. She'd say stuff like, wow, this house is so big. It must take forever to keep clean. Do you do all the cleaning yourself? Which, yes, I did because nobody else was offering to help. Or she'd say, I can't wait until the baby's here. We're gonna need so much space for all the baby stuff, the crib, the changing table, all the clothes and toys. At first, I thought she was just thinking out loud, the way pregnant women do when they're nesting or whatever. But then I started noticing she'd say these things while looking around the house with this calculating expression, like she was taking inventory or planning something. Then came the conversation that changed everything. I just finished a really long day of work. I've been in back-to-back meetings for like 6 hours straight, and my brain was fried. I came out of my office around 6 in the evening, planning to grab some food and just vegetate on the couch for a bit. Jake and Emma were in the living room, and when they saw me, Jake stood up and said they wanted to talk to me about something. I remember thinking, okay, maybe they're finally going to apologize for eating all my food and taking up so much space. Or maybe they're going to tell me they found an apartment and they'll be moving out soon. I was actually feeling kind of hopeful. We sat down, and Emma did most of the talking. She had this really calm, matter-of-fact tone, like what she was about to say was completely reasonable. She said, "So, we've been thinking about the sleeping arrangements. It would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom." I just stared at her. I literally could not process what I was hearing. I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. I said, "What?" Jake jumped in, backing her up. "We need more space. The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom. It just makes sense. I want you to understand something. This is my house. My name is on the mortgage. I pay every single bill. I buy every single grocery. I paid the down payment with money I saved up over years of working my ass off. And these two people who have contributed exactly $0 to this household are sitting in my living room telling me I need to give up my bedroom." I must have sat there for a solid 10 seconds, just staring at them, trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. But they were both looking at me like they genuinely expected me to just say, "Okay," and start packing up my stuff. Finally, I managed to say, "Why don't you just take the spare room? It's already set up for guests, and it's plenty big enough." Emma shook her head. "That room doesn't have a walk-in closet. The baby's going to need space for all its things." I felt this surge of anger rising up in my chest, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm not giving up my room. You can have the spare room, or you can find somewhere else to stay." Jake looked shocked, like he genuinely couldn't believe I wasn't just rolling over and giving them what they wanted. But Emma, she looked offended, like I'd insulted her somehow by not agreeing to give up my own bedroom in my own house. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end well. That's when I knew something had to change. After that conversation, I honestly thought maybe they'd realize how ridiculous they sounded and just drop it. I mean, who asked the person who's paying for everything to give up their personal space? But I was wrong. Over the next couple of days, it didn't back off. Instead, they got more comfortable. Way too comfortable. They spread their stuff all over the house. Emma's pregnancy books on the coffee table. Jake's shoes by the couch. They started talking about the house like it was theirs, making plans for where the baby stuff would go, discussing which wall in the living room would be good for a family photo. Then came the day I had to go into the office. I usually work from home, but sometimes there are meetings I have to be physically present for. I left around 8 in the morning, figuring I'd be back by lunchtime. When I got home around noon, I immediately knew something was wrong. My stuff was in the hallway. Not all of it, but enough that I knew exactly what was happening. My clothes were in a pile on the floor. My computer monitor was sitting there unplugged, like someone had been in the middle of moving it and just left it there. Some of my books, my phone charger, a few random things from my nightstand, all just dumped in the hallway. My heart was racing as I walked toward my bedroom. Part of me couldn't believe this was actually happening. But when I opened the door, there was Emma standing in the middle of my room, packing up the last of my things into a box. She didn't even look surprised when I walked in. She glanced over at me and said, "Oh, hey, I was just finishing up." I couldn't believe it. "What the hell are you doing?" She stayed completely calm, like this was totally normal. "Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon, and we need the space." My mom said. My mom, who doesn't pay a single cent toward anything in this house, thought she could just give away my bedroom without even talking to me about it. I could feel my blood pressure spiking. "No, you're not moving into my room. I already told you guys to take the guest room." Emma crossed her arms and gave me this look like I was being the unreasonable one. "The guest room is too small for the baby. There's no closet. We need more space." "I don't care," I said, and my voice was louder than I intended. "You're not taking my room. I'm the one paying the mortgage. I'm the one who's been paying for everything in this house. You and Jake aren't contributing anything. If you need more space, you're welcome to find your own place." That's when Emma started looking upset, but I didn't care anymore. She said, "Your mom said it was fine, like that was supposed to be the end of the discussion. I turned around, grabbed my phone, and called my mom right there. She answered after a couple rings, and I didn't even let her say hello. Mom, did you tell Jake and Emma they could move into my room? There was this long pause. Then she said, well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? I pay the mortgage. I pay for all the groceries. I pay the bills. And you think it's okay for Jake and Emma to just take over my room? She tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal, that we're all family, that we should be helping each other out. But I was done listening. I'm not giving them my room, I said. And if they don't move their stuff out, they're going to need to find another place to stay. By this point, Emma must have heard me because she came out of the room looking furious. You're seriously going to throw us out? With a baby on the way? That's when Jake walked in from outside. He must have heard the yelling because he came in looking pissed off too. What's going on? I laid it out for him. What's going on is your wife thinks she can just take over my room without even asking. And I'm telling you both right now, it's not happening. You can either stay in the guest room or you can leave. Jake got all defensive, talking about how we're family and how I should be willing to make sacrifices for them. But at that point, I was beyond reasoning. Sacrifices? I said, I'm already paying for this entire house. Were you guys contributing? Nothing. And now you think you could just walk in and take over? The yelling got pretty intense. My mom kept trying to call me back, but I ignored her. I was too angry to deal with her excuses. Jake kept going on about how I wasn't being fair, how they had a baby on the way, how families should stick together. Finally, I'd had enough. I looked at both of them and said, you've got until the end of the day to move your stuff out of my room. If you don't, I'll move it out for you. Emma stormed off, slamming the door. Jake just stood there glaring at me, but I didn't care. This was my house, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. I spent the rest of that day in my office, trying to calm down and cool off. I didn't want to deal with any more arguments. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. They were going to give up that easily, and I had a feeling my mom was going to keep pushing too. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. The next day, I mostly kept to myself. I was still angry, still processing everything that had happened. I figured maybe if I just avoided everyone for a while, things would calm down naturally. But by the time dinner rolled around, I realized nothing had calmed down at all. I walked into the kitchen to grab some food. I'd gone grocery shopping just 2 days before, spent probably $200 stocking up on everything. But when I opened the fridge, it was practically empty. Food I just bought was gone. I checked the freezer. Same thing. I knew my parents didn't eat that much, and it obviously wasn't me. Jake and Emma had helped themselves to basically everything without even asking. I was already irritated, but I tried to brush it off. I'd just buy more tomorrow. But then my mom came into the kitchen and started making dinner. She made plates for herself, my dad, Jake, and Emma. And then she sat down without making one for me. At first I thought she'd just forgotten, so I waited. But she finished serving everyone, and they all started eating. I was just standing there like an idiot, watching them. You didn't make me a plate, I finally said. My mom barely looked up. You don't want to help the family. You don't eat with the family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? I pay for everything here, the groceries, the mortgage, the bills, and now I'm being iced out. She didn't even answer. My dad just sighed and kept eating like nothing was happening. Jake and Emma were sitting there with these smug looks on their faces, like they'd won some kind of power struggle. Emma actually smiled at me when I walked past. That was it. I was done. I went straight to my room, grabbed my laptop, and started looking up eviction notices. If they weren't going to treat me with respect in my own house, then they could find somewhere else to live. Within an hour, I had everything printed out. 2 sets, one for Jake and Emma, one for my parents. It felt weird, surreal even, preparing to kick out my own family. But they crossed too many lines. They'd been disrespecting me for weeks, acting like the house was theirs. And now they were literally trying to freeze me out because I wouldn't give in to their demands. I walked out to the living room where everyone was sitting and slapped the papers down in front of them. Jake picked them up, scanning them with confusion, turning to shock. What's this? You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave, I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake's face went pale. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious, I said. I'm done with this. You've been freeloading here without contributing anything, and now you think you could take over my house? No, not anymore. Jake stood up, trying to look intimidating, but I wasn't backing down. We're family, he said through gritted teeth. Yes, And family doesn't take advantage of each other, I shot back. I'm the one who pays for this house. Not you, not Emma, not mom and dad. If you can't be respectful, you don't get to stay here. Emma started crying, like that was going to change anything. I'm pregnant and you're kicking us out? What kind of brother are you? The kind who's been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me, I said. You have 24 hours. That's more than generous. My mom finally spoke up. You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family. I've already done it, I said, pointing to the eviction notice in her hands. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else too. If you're not gone by then, I'll be taking legal action. The room went completely silent. My dad just sat there staring at the table. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about standing up for myself. After a few minutes, I walked back to my room and locked the door. I'd just done something I never thought I'd have to do, kick out my own family. But it felt right. I wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. The house was quiet for the rest of the night. Nobody came to my door. Nobody tried to argue with me. I think they finally realized I wasn't messing around. And honestly, I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke up early. I couldn't really sleep anyway. I was half expecting someone to come banging on my door, demanding I change my mind. But the house was quiet. When I went to the kitchen to make coffee, nobody was there. For a second, I wondered if they'd all packed up and left in the middle of the night, but I knew that was just wishful thinking. I made my coffee and sat at the table, waiting. Eventually, my mom came in. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. She poured herself a cup and sat down across from me. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Honey, I know things had gotten out of hand. I didn't say anything, just stare at my coffee. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother, she continued. We were just trying to help them, and I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you. That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit that, at least not so soon. You didn't just ignore what I wanted, I said. You sided with them every single time. Like you just assumed I'd roll over and let them take whatever they wanted. I know, she said quietly, but we thought, well, you've always been a strong one. Jake's never had it easy. That excuse again. Jake wasn't strong. Jake had struggled more. Jake needed more support. Like I didn't have limits just because I had my life together. You think I've had it easy? I asked. I'm the one who bought this house. I pay the mortgage. I pay for groceries. I've been carrying all of you, and you think I can just keep doing that forever? She looked down at her coffee. I know you've done a lot, more than we could have asked for, but with the baby on the way, this isn't about the baby. I cut her off. This is about respect, and you guys haven't shown me any. She sighed and nodded slowly. You're right. We should have seen it sooner. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then she said, we'll figure something out, but please don't push us out. Not like this. I leaned back in my chair. I don't want to push you out. You're my parents, but things need to change. I can't keep living like this, being treated like I don't matter in my own house. Okay, she said. We'll figure something out. Later that afternoon, Jake finally showed up. He looked like he'd been stewing over everything all night. He sat down across from me without saying hi. So this is how it's going to be? He asked. You're really going to kick us out? I gave you 24 hours, I said calmly. If you're still here tomorrow, I'm calling the police. He shook his head. We're family. Yeah, and family doesn't take advantage of each other. You've had weeks to figure this out. I'm not your fallback plan. He didn't have much to say after that. Just sat there for a minute before getting up and walking away. Typical Jake. The rest of the day was quiet. Too quiet, honestly. I didn't know what Jake and Emma were planning to do, but I wasn't changing my mind. I'd given them a deadline, and they knew I wasn't bluffing. The next morning, I woke up to a different kind of silence. I got up and went into the kitchen, and right away, I noticed the house felt different. Not tense exactly, but just quieter. Calmer, maybe. My dad was in the kitchen when I walked in. He grabbed a cup of coffee, sat down across from me, and after a minute he said, Jake and Emma are leaving today. I nodded, not sure if he was reminding me of the deadline or telling me they decided to go on their own. They don't have anywhere to go, he continued quietly. They're going to stay at a motel for a while until they figure things out. Part of me felt bad, but the bigger part knew this had to happen. I've been too nice for too long, and if I didn't put my foot down now, they'd just keep taking advantage. I gave them time, I said. I didn't want it to come to this, but they left me no choice. He didn't argue, just nodded and kept drinking his coffee. I think he finally understood that I wasn't backing down this time. Around noon, Jake and Emma started packing up their stuff. I stayed in my room for most of it, not wanting another argument. But after a while, I heard Jake's voice getting louder down the hall. and I knew it was only a matter of time before he came to my door. Sure enough, he knocked. I opened it, and he stood there with that same angry look he'd had since I gave him the eviction notice. "You're really going to let this happen?" he asked. "You're just going to kick us out like this?" "I gave you 24 hours," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head. "We're family, man. You don't do this to family. Family doesn't take advantage of each other," I replied. "I'm not just kicking you out for no reason. You've been freeloading here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying the mortgage, the groceries, everything. And instead of being grateful, you try to take my room and push me out of my own house." Jake didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could tell he was angry, but there was nothing left to argue. He knew I was right, even if he didn't want to admit it. "So if that's it," he finally said. "You're just throwing us out?" "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday," I said. "Find somewhere else to live, or stay in the guest room and actually respect me and my space. But if you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." He glared at me, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door and let out a long breath. It was exhausting, but I knew it had to be done. By mid-afternoon, Jake and Emma were gone. I didn't see them leave, and honestly, I didn't want to. They packed up their stuff, loaded it into their car, and drove off without saying goodbye. The house felt different after they left. Quieter, less tense. My parents didn't say much to me that day. I think they were still processing everything. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in, sat on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a while. "They're gone," she said softly. I nodded. "I never thought it would get to this point," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her. Some of the frustration was starting to lift. "It's not that I didn't want to help, but you guys treated me like I didn't matter. Like my needs and my space weren't important." She sighed and nodded. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." We sat in silence for a few minutes. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded again, standing up slowly. "We'll figure it out. Things will be different. I promise." After she left, I felt this strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation with Jake and Emma was over, but there was still work to be done with my parents. It wasn't going to be easy, but at least now it felt like they were willing to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. The house was quiet, and the tension that had been hanging in the air was gone. It wasn't a perfect solution, but at least now I had my space back. And most importantly, I had my respect.
Stay safe out there. Until next time.